Yesterday we read the chapter where Grandma got craned out, and then we were looking at the chapter Mr. Cranky's Great Idea. Did you make your brainstorm? Did you think of some ideas? Well, let's see if any of the ideas that you had or the idea that I had were correct. If they're not, that's okay, because you've used your imagination to think of lots of good ideas. So the next day, George's father came down to breakfast in a state of greater excitement than ever. "I've been awake all night thinking about it," he cried. "About what, Dad?" George asked him. "About your marvellous medicine, of course. We can't stop now, my boy. We must start making more of it at once. More and more and more." So, were you right? This is the first idea, isn't it? That maybe they're going to make some more. Let's see if they can do it. The giant saucepan had been completely emptied the day before because there had been so many sheep, pigs, cows and bullocks to be dosed. "But why do we need more, Dad?" George asked. "We've done all of our animals, and we've made Grandma feel as frisky as a ferret, even though she does have to sleep in the barn." "Oh, my dear boy," cried Mr. Killycranky, "we need barrels and barrels of it, tons and tons. Then we will sell it to every farmer in the world, so that all of them can have giant animals. We'll build a marvellous medicine factory, and we'll sell the stuff in bottles at £5 a time. We will become rich, and you will be famous." "But wait, Dad," George said. "There's no waiting," cried Mr. Cranky, working himself up so much that he put butter in his coffee and milk on his toast. "Don't you understand? This is a tremendous invention of yours. It's going to do the world. No one will ever go hungry again." "Why won't they?" asked George. "Because one giant cow will give 50 buckets of milk a day," cried Mr. Cranky, waving his arm. "One giant chicken will make 100 fried chicken dinners. One giant pig will give you 1,000 pork chops. It'll be tremendous, my dear boy. It's fantastic. It'll change the world." "But wait a minute, Dad," George shouted again. "Don't keep saying wait a minute," shouted Mr. Cranky. "There isn't a minute to wait. We must get cracking at once." So yesterday, Mr. Cranky was excited, but today he seems even more excited. George keeps saying, "Wait a minute, and let's slow down." But Mr. Cranky doesn't want to wait, doesn't he? Like he says here, we must get cracking at once. So he wants to start at once. "Oh, do calm down, my dear," Mrs. Cranky said from the other end of the table, "and stop putting marmalade on your cornflakes." "What the heck with the cornflakes?" cried Mr. Cranky, leaping up from his chair. "Come on, George, let's get going. And the first thing we'll do is make one more saucepan as a tester." "But, Dad," said little George, "the trouble is—" "There won't be any trouble, my boy," cried Mr. Cranky. "How can there possibly be any trouble? All you have to do is put the same stuff in the saucepan as you did yesterday. And while you're doing it, I'll write it down. Each and every item. That's how we'll get the magic recipe." "But, Dad," George said, "please listen to me." "Why don't you listen to him?" Mrs. Cranky said. "The boy is trying to tell you something." But Mr. Cranky was too excited to listen to anyone except himself. "And then," he cried, "when the mixture's ready, we'll test it out on the old hen, just to make absolutely sure we've got it right. After that, we'll shout hooray and build a giant factory." "But, Dad—" "Come on, then. What is it you want to say?" "I can't possibly remember all the hundreds of things I put into the saucepan to make the medicine," George said. "Of course you can, my dear boy," Mr. Cranky said. "I'll help you. I'll jog your memory. You'll get it in the end. You'll see if you don't. Now then, what's the very first thing you put in?" "I went up to the bathroom first," George said. "I used a lot of things in the bathroom on Mummy's dressing table." "Come on then," cried Mr. Killycranky. "Up to the bathroom." When they got there, they found, of course, a lot of empty tubes and empty aerosols and empty bottles. "That's great, Mr. Cranky. That tells us exactly what you've used. And if anything is empty, that means you used it." So Mr. Cranky started making a list of everything that was empty in the bathroom. Then they went to Mrs. Cranky's dressing table. "A box of powder," said Mr. Cranky, writing it down. "Helga's hair set. Flowers of tulips, perfume. Terrific. This is going to be easy. Where did you go next?" "To the laundry room," George said. "But are you sure you haven't missed anything out up here?" said Dan. That's up to you, my boy, Mr. Frankie said. Have I? I don't think so, George said. So down they went to the laundry room, and once again Mr. Cranky wrote down all the names of the empty bottles and cans. My goodness me, what a mass of stuff you've used, he cried. No wonder it did all those magic things. Is that the lot? No, Dad, it's not, George said. He led his father out to the shed where the animal medicines were kept, and he showed him 5 big empty bottles on the shelf. Mr. Cranky wrote down the names. Anything else? Mr. Cranky asked. Little George scratched his head and thought he couldn't remember having put anything else in. Mr. Killicranky leapt in his car and drove down to the village and bought new bottles and tubes and cans of everything on the list. Then he went to the vet to get a fresh supply of the animal medicines George had used. Now, show me how you did it, George, he said. Come along, show me exactly how you mixed them all together. So if you look at the picture, Mr. Killicranky, how's he feeling? Yep, he's really, really excited, isn't he? Yep. And George, I would say, is probably feeling a bit nervous or anxious. Why do you think he might be feeling nervous or anxious? So it does say here that he scratched his head and thought, but he couldn't remember having put anything else in. So now we know that he has forgotten some things, hasn't he? But maybe he's feeling a little bit nervous. Or, oh, have I got it right? Have I forgotten anything? So see if you can remember some of the things he's forgotten or which rooms he didn't go in, and let's see what happens. Because tomorrow we're reading this chapter about Marvellous Medicine number 2. So they've got all the stuff they think they need, and they're going to make the second medicine. What do you think is going to happen? Let's wait and see tomorrow. Bye for now.